Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So I know everybody on the call, and I'm so excited you guys could be here because we want to go through and educate you a little bit and really just share experience because hopefully we can walk away with you personalizing some of the stories you're going to hear from Malcolm and Isabel later, and how this might resonate with what you're experiencing today and what could be possible. So we love the idea of just how to help you get ahead of things and transform your world with a solution. So as I say that, and Diana changes the screen, this is a scary slide. So part of the questions we asked in the lead-in was what word comes to mind, and these are a lot of the things that we hear from people kind of pre-GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, because they don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, and it causes a lot of angst. So our goal here at the end of the day is show you what's possible after GRC. So we welcome you with open arms. We want this to be engaging. Please use the chat. We've got our product manager from GRC is actually going to be our chat master today. And then we'll compile all the questions and send them out as well. But in case you don't know what GRC is, we're going to run through that so we can level set. Everybody will be on the same page. And then a real life story of what it can do for your organization. We'll take a live look at the demonstration. Isabel is one of our SMEs, our solution expert, and we'll get right into that so you can see the tool in action, start to personalize it. And then how can you personalize and embrace this into your own ecosystem and what that would look like? So that'll be fun. We have a team of folks here with us. Y'all know me, Christy Gilman, Infor, and Diana is the Senior Vice President from our partner, ROI, who is helping us in this endeavor. So I'm super excited. You'll at least be able to hear who they are as an organization. We're very proud to have them in our partner list. I mentioned Isabel and Malcolm. They are key speakers today. They're the real world's hands-on people. And with that, Miss Diana, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, and thanks for joining us today. I know you guys have a very busy day. Just 2 seconds about who we are. If you are not familiar with us, I know some of you on the phone are very familiar with us. We just took you to a successful go live, but ROI has been around the Infor ecosystem doing implementations for the last couple of decades. We've started as a project management based company. We've been around since 1999, and we're one of the highest ranked by class implementation firms. So as you think about implementations and you think about optimization of your current systems and really looking at your plan for your technology stack, those are the things that we can help you with and absolutely help you on that journey as you look at your next steps with your technology. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our subject matter experts here, Isabel and Malcolm, and they are going to share all kinds of good things with you about governance, risk, and compliance, and then we'll come back, have a little fun at the end, and maybe some questions too. Isabel, it's all yours.
Amazing. Thank you, Diana. So like Diana and Christy said, my name is Isabel Earls. I am a solution consultant here with Infor, and I'm going to be taking us through the demonstration today, as well as a little kickoff and introduction to what GRC is here at the beginning and how it can help you. So let's start with what is GRC? So Infor GRC is a powerful platform that helps organizations to stay on top of governance, risk, and compliance. Infor GRC gives you the tools to monitor processes, ensure you meet your legal and regulatory requirements, and ultimately reduce potential risks. So with Infor GRC, you can ultimately protect your assets and operations by putting the right policies in the right place. You can also assess vulnerabilities and create proactive strategies to address them so you can be more proactive versus reactive. So Infor GRC provides various benefits to your organization, but here are 4 of the key benefits that can be obtained through GRC. So the whole idea here is that GRC strengthens control across your entire organization with key features like preventing single points of failure, detecting fraud earlier, And again, ensuring you meet regulations and making audits faster as well as more reliable. All right, so looking at this slide here, this is making up the key components of GRC. So when we talk about GRC, there's really 4 pillars that go into the functionality there. So first and foremost, you'll see on the far left is authorization insights. So this addresses things like segregation of duties, or SOD, as you'll hear us commonly refer to that as, and then also sensitive data and access policies. Next to that, we've got Access Manager, another element of GRC, and that it's primarily used to ensure compliant user provisioning, to help prevent control and compliance issues, and then it also streamlines security change management processes as well. Next, we've got Certification Manager, and this is used for running periodic access reviews and verifications. So ultimately, that's going to help your organization enforce consistent review processes so that you're continuously monitoring those different provisioning. And then lastly, we've got Process Insights. So this ultimately helps to monitor business transactions as well as master data, and that allows you to mitigate fraud by doing things like identifying anomalies and inaccuracies that might be in your data. And so in a few moments here, we'll get to the live demonstration, and we'll actually see the first 3 pillars that we talked about there. So authorization insights, access manager, and certification manager. But before that, I am going to turn it over to Malcolm, who knows very well from real world experience with his time at Christus Health, what life looks like before GRC as well as what it looks like after. So I'm going to pass it over to Malcolm.
It's my time already, so soon. So yeah, but anyway, like Isabel was saying, my name is Malcolm Jackson, Director, ERP Technology and Application Managed Services for ROI. And so today, I just wanted to jump in here and share my Infor GRC journey during my time with Christus Health, and how implementing Infor GRC helped us with mitigating many audit challenges. So if you're not familiar with Christus Health, I'll give you a quick rundown. They're a not-for-profit healthcare organization headquartered in Dallas, Texas, or Irving, Texas, if you know anything about the DFW area. And they have about 50,000 plus and counting employees, and they have operations in Chile, Mexico, and Colombia, Texas, New Mexico, and Louisiana. So we had a lot to do during my time there, and it was an awesome experience. And so one of the things that we didn't have was a solution for segregation of duties. And with that being said, when internal audit approached us, when I say us, I mean the ERP technical team and the entire ERP sustainment team, they were ready for internal audit of SOD violations, and we had no solution, right? And so since we didn't have a solution, we really ran into a lot of manual audit challenges, which you're seeing on the screen right now. So I'll just walk through a couple of these challenges, and then we'll go into deeper details about the actual modules that we implemented. So some of the challenges were that it was time consuming, error prone, misleading violation count. I want everybody to keep their eye on that third piece, the misleading violation count. That part right there gave us every single word that you saw on the cloud, the word cloud earlier in the presentation. I'm telling you, everybody almost quit. I'm not joking around, but we wanted to work through it. We knew we had a challenge ahead of us, and we figured it out. But the manual pieces, we didn't. So moving along, we had issues with documents and audit findings to generate reports. It was a delay in mitigating risks because of the misleading violation counts and operating in silos. And so after, this is all pre-GRC. So now we'll move into kind of how post-GRC implementation kind of helped us mitigate all of those manual tasks, and so how these different modules helped us get there. So the first module that I want to talk about, and the first module that we actually implemented, was Authorization Insight. And as you know, or if you don't know, as Isabel alluded to earlier, Authorization Insight is the primary module for segregation of duty monitoring and auditing. So going back to what I said earlier, we didn't have a solution. So I want y'all to look at this particular number down in the middle of the screen. We had, because we didn't have a solution, we had 9,331 segregation of duty violation results on our report. I'll say it again in case you didn't hear me or in case you just didn't read it yet. 9,331 violations. So again, that took us right back to stress, complexity, non-compliance. And so we didn't know exactly how to go through that. So how do we even get to that number? Well, our internal auditing partner, they didn't have a solution. And so we provided them all LPL from Landmark for FSM only. We did not implement HRT. It was only FSM. So we provided all the LPL, and they literally used Excel spreadsheets to go through our violations. So anything that said, for example, employee business class is accessible for all actions unconditionally, that was counted as a violation, and that's how we got to the 9,331. But post GRC implementation, we actually had 121 true violations. So you may ask yourself, well, how did you go from 9,331 to 121? Well, using Infor GRC and its native tools, we were able to get there. So like I said earlier, our implementation partner or our internal audit partner, they didn't have a solution. We didn't have a solution. But within GRC, you have things called rule books. And these rule books actually read or parse or communicate with the LPL, and it compares one business class to the other, and it's actually doing the logic. So the rule books are the brains behind the entire Authorization Insight processing. So you have delivered rule books, and you can also customize rule books to meet your business needs. And once you have those native things and those native processes, once you submit your violations, you will get an accurate count. And that's how we came out to 121 true violations. And everything on that word cloud went away because we now can mitigate 121 rather than 9,331. So if you look across the bottom of the screen, you'll see some numbers, and I'll use these to explain some more successes that we had. So with Infor GRC, we were able to have a 94% faster remediation. So we went from 48 weeks to 3 weeks, and that kind of details the 9,000 and the 121. That had us saving 561 hours annually to remediate these issues, which also led to 78% faster auditing and reporting, and it only took 4 months to implement Authorization Insight. Now, a little information here. Christus Health was a large organization. It still is a large organization. It took us 4 months. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll take you 4 months or less than 4 months, but I still think no matter whatever the amount of time it takes to implement, that you will be super successful and glad you did it. So moving right along, Access Manager Insight. This was actually the second module that we implemented. And if you look across the top of the screen, Access Manager is usually, out of the box, is used for automated user provisioning. So we didn't necessarily use Access Manager exactly for what it was designed to do at the full scale. And let me explain why. During my time at Christus Health, I identified that user provisioning was just doing it manual out of the box. It was just a horrible solution, right? So we used IPA to create an automated user provisioning solution. So we already had that by the time Access Manager was implemented. So I had to think of a way that we could use and leverage Access Manager. And one of the beautiful things about Access Manager is that it has an internal approval workflow. And so thinking about our role to position mapping documentation, our IPA auto provisioning, I said, okay, I slept on it. I thought a little bit. I said, okay, I know how we can use it. I came back to work one day and I said, all right, we can leverage that auto provisioning, well, not the auto provisioning, but the auto approval and a portion of the provisioning from Access Manager Insight. So we had a thing called elevated access request, right? So what is an elevated access request? So remember I talked about role to position mapping. If you have a position, you have certain roles that are approved to be mapped to your position. So let's say if you're a buyer, a controller, an accountant, whatever position that is, you have certain number of roles that will map to that, and it's approved by leadership. Well, anything outside of that is an elevated access request. So the business units would open tickets through ServiceNow, what we call an elevated access request, because it fell outside the R2PM. And sometimes we would provision that access. Sometimes we'd have to reject that access. But it was taking 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, because there was a gap in communication. Sometimes the business owners or the role owners in those business units and the leaders, they were out of office. We couldn't get a hold of them, or sometimes people just didn't know who it was. And so let's say a buyer is requesting a controller role. That's an inherent SOD violation within itself, right? And so let's say we assigned that role and we didn't notify the role owner of the controller role, right? So that's a violation. That's the wrong answer. And Access Manager was able to help us bridge that gap. And let me explain how. So when implementing Access Manager, we were able to build out role owners within GRC, and anytime we would get an elevated access request, we would open, so you get the ticket in ServiceNow, then we'd open a case within Access Manager, and then we would input the notes, we would identify the actor, the role, or the roles that they needed, and then we would hit submit. And when you submit that request through Access Manager, the auto approval workflow, it would flow to those role owners. So they could be out of office, they could have a backup, they would automatically see that approval on their device, right? And they could easily accept or approve or reject that provisioning. Let's say they denied the provision. So the notification would come back into Access Manager. We would be notified via email, and we would go into that particular case, and then we would easily just say, okay, you were denied, put the notes in, close the ticket, we could move on to the next ticket. So let's say it was approved. You'll get that same notification, but here's the difference. If it's approved, the role was auto provisioned to that user. And so we were able to bridge the communication gap with the business. We were able to use the automated feature for approval and auto provisioning to a degree for elevated access requests. And if you look across the bottom of the screen, I'll share some more numbers with you. That led to 67% faster user provisioning. It was averaging about 3 days to do that for elevated access requests, and it really went down to 1 day, 2 at the max. That saved us 4,500 hours annually with 67% faster auditing and reporting. And Access Manager only took us 4 months to implement. All right, last but not least, and this was our least used module, but it was still very important. So Certification Manager, as Isabel alluded to earlier as well, is for excessive access and sensitive data. So the main thing here is once you set it, you can forget it until it's time for you to revisit your Certification Manager audit, right? And when I say excessive access or access to sensitive data, we're talking about, pay details, demographic information, or if you have users who have way too much access, and we know that they exist. We know some large facilities feel like they have everything under control, but once you start digging down into the weeds and running some of these audits, you'll be surprised, to be honest with you. But implementing Certification Manager, we were able to have a 75% excessive access review. What was taking us 8 weeks manually went down to 2 weeks, and it saved us 240 hours, 92% faster auditing with robust reporting. And this is a smaller module with not too many moving parts, and it only took us 2 months to implement. So next, I'm gonna pass it back to Isabel, and she's gonna get into the GRC demonstration.
Great. Thanks, Malcolm. All right, so now we are going to go ahead and get into the core of the system and see live some of the functionality that was used to help Malcolm and his team during his time at Christus Health leverage these tools to get the kind of results that they did. So as you can see here, we are logged in right into the core of GRC. And the first thing that we're looking at here is a workspace. Now, some of you might be familiar with the idea of workspaces, but if you're not, the whole idea is to consolidate and push out to you any reports, key areas of focus, different action items, all out to one screen based on your specific role in the organization. So in this case, we are looking at a workspace that's related to all things GRC. So whether it's the security department or the IT department that manages some of these elements within GRC, this is an area where they can come in and view a high level of reports, analytics, things that might be important to review front and center when they log in. So you'll notice we've got some menu items to go directly to key areas of focus within GRC, as well as some different reports and documents that might be important and necessary to review right here front and center on our workspace. And then more importantly, we've got some analytics. So here you can see we've got two flavors of violation reports. And we'll look at the violation component of GRC more here in a second. But in this case, you can see immediately when I log in, I'm already starting to get some insights into those violations that I have based on my provisioning of the different users. So in this case, I'm looking at violations by object. So object is just what we call a user in the solution. And here you'll notice I'm able to see a breakdown of all of my different users in the solution and the different levels of violations that they have. So we'll talk more about this in a minute, but we categorize violations from informational and low all the way up to medium and high. And then scrolling down a little bit, we've got another look at a violation summary, but this time by rule. So Malcolm alluded to the rules that we have in the solution, and we'll see those here in just a second. But this is where we're able to see a summary of all of the different rules that currently have violations against them. And again, we can see them categorized by that severity or that priority of informational, low, medium, and high. Now, you could, of course, dig in, get into the details behind these analytics, start taking action if something catches your eye, but it immediately gives you that insight right when you log into the solution. But I am going to jump into the core of GRC, and we're going to start with authorization insights. So this is what's going to deal with segregation of duties, or SOD. And we're going to see some of the key features here. So what we're looking at right now is a dashboard, essentially, of all of our violations. So this is giving me a violation report of every violation that we have here in the solution. Notice again, you've got easy navigation to find specific violations within those different priority buckets. So depending on the severity of those violations, you can drill right into the listing of those specific items. Now, in this case, I am actually going to search on some of the violations that I have around payment processing. And when I do that general search, you'll notice it's going to bring up all the different violations that have to do with the payment processing workflow here. And you'll see I've got several that are around creating a vendor as well as being able to process a payment. So let's take a look at one of these violations here. And you'll notice this is a violation for Tim. So he is one of our users in the solution. And it's going to push out this violation. And it's letting us know here that the reason that we're seeing this violation is because his provisioning is conflicting with the rule that we have of creating a vendor versus being able to make a payment or pay that vendor. So easily here, as someone in charge and managing all of the GRC ongoings, I can come in and start to get some details around not only this violation as a whole, but in this case, some of the details around the rule that this violation is going against. So you'll notice here, if I click that hyperlink, I'm able to see things like that priority So again, is this a high priority, a high risk violation that's going against this rule? As well as the description. So I'm able to get just a very simple, plain language description of what this rule is and why it's important that we enforce this type of rule against the different provisions. Now, I can also do a little bit of research around this particular violation as well. So when it comes to looking at Tim, who's the user we're looking at right now, I can start to look at other violations that this user may have. So outside of the current violation around creating a vendor and paying that vendor, what other violations does Tim's user provisioning trigger? And I can also look at other violations that are triggered for other users based on this same rule as well. So really giving you a 360-degree view of all other violations that are related to the current one that we're looking at. But coming back here, you'll notice when it comes to, we've seen that there's a violation here for Tim's user. We understand the rule, but then how do we take action, right? That's the whole point, is we're giving you this information to go ahead and ultimately decide how you're going to handle that violation. So a couple of key things here. You'll notice we've got various different ways that we can start to analyze this information, invoke other people in our organization to help review, discuss this violation before we take any action. But then our main method here of actually taking action is going to be how we mitigate this violation. So you'll see when I come into the mitigation area, it's going to show me that I've got a couple of ways I can mitigate this. So I can manually go in and update Tim's provisions, maybe remove his access to create a payment or remove his access to create a vendor. I can also create those changes based on provisioning. So using more of a template-based approach to take a look at what the standard provisioning should be for a user like Tim. But then maybe I just want to exclude Tim from this report, right? So maybe this is the sort of situation where Tim wears a lot of hats in the organization, and it's just not realistic for us to take away both of these provisioned roles, right? Tim does still need to be able to create a vendor as well as create and execute payments. So in this case, we're able to leverage what we call compensating controls. So essentially what this is doing is it allows us to come in and look at this predefined list of essentially justifications of how we are going to handle this violation and ensure that it never becomes a true risk, and nothing negative comes out of the fact that we're not going to change Tim's provisions. So we can select any one of these, but essentially what we're doing here is telling the system, look, we understand there's a violation. We can't update Tim's provisioning, but what we can do is go ahead and put some more invoice approvals in our workflow. We can do a journal entry review at the end of the period. It's telling the system all of the ways that we are going to still go ahead and mitigate that risk despite keeping his provisioning the same. All right, so if we jump back here, we looked at some of those violations, and specifically, we looked at Tim's violation there around creating a vendor and then being able to create payments. But what's driving that? What's triggering all of those violations to occur? And that is the rules that Malcolm discussed. So these rules are rules that we've developed through our experience in all of the governance, risk, and compliance space that we've been in for quite some time as an organization, as well as partnering with some of the top audit firms to get their insight into what are some of the standard best practice rules that need to be enforced in order to manage and mitigate the risk that goes on, particularly with segregation of duties in an organization. And so that's how those rules are developed. And that's what, again, is triggering those different violations that we just saw. Now, All of those different individual rules are grouped into rule books. So typically that'll be based on the, the functional process that those rules fall under. You can see we've got payroll, accounts receivable, accounts payable. So just an easy way of grouping those rules based on, what kind of category, what kind of workflow process they're actually monitoring. And when we come into the rule book, we're looking at our accounts payable rule book. You'll notice that we've got all of those different individual rules. So these are all the individual rules that like I said, were developed from our experience with those audit firms to enforce and make sure that we're monitoring the provisioning of users correctly. So there's a lot of detail behind these different rules, but you can see just at a quick snapshot view here that we've got information around the priority again. We can see if these rules are enabled, so they're currently being utilized to track against the user provisioning that we have in the system. And then again, we've got the ability to come in, get more detail, and understand really what that rule means and why it's being enforced as well. Now, the last thing I want to touch on here, as it pertains to our authorization insights, is what we call what-if analysis. So this is one of the areas where a lot of our customers find huge benefit because this allows you to essentially go ahead and run, for lack of a better term, a what-if analysis around a user's provisioning. So this allows you to get some insights, analyze what violations could come out of provisioning a certain user or a new user with the roles that you're thinking of provisioning them, and see, these are the violations that could come out of it. Maybe we need to change the roles that we're provisioning, or at least to be aware so that going forward, you are empowered to know, okay, we've provisioned this user with XYZ roles, but we need to make sure that we look out for some of these violations that are going to come as a result of that. So you can see I've got a few what-if analyses here. Now, like I alluded to earlier, I can run these analyses for an existing user. So maybe I have a certain user in my organization that I'm thinking of provisioning with an additional role. I can go ahead and do a what-if analysis on that. See, before I take any action, what impact that will have against those rules and what violations could be a result. And then I can also do this for new users as well. So this is where we see a lot of customers utilizing this. We have a new employee coming on board, and we want to make sure that as we're provisioning his roles and his security authorization, that there are no issues that could come as a result of that before we actually go ahead and do the provisioning. So just to show you a little bit of a flavor of what it looks like here in this analysis, you can see this is one I've already created, and I'm going ahead and looking at a couple of the additional roles that I added this user, Pam. And you'll notice that if I look at our violation count by rules, the system's going to plainly explain to me that based on that additional rule, so I gave Pam an additional role as the buyer, it's going to show me that the violation that's going to come out of that is Pam cannot create a purchase order as well as manage the receipt of a purchase order. So again, now as someone that's managing all of the provisioning, I'm empowered with this knowledge to go ahead and understand the violations that are going to occur if I continue with this provisioning that I'm planned for Pam. And this is kind of a living, breathing analysis. So you can remove, add roles, and continue to reanalyze and get additional information on what the impact is and where the violations could come out of the different groupings of provisioned roles that you give Pam. All right, so that covers segregation of duties and what some of the key elements of authorization insights are. We're now going to take a look at another area that Malcolm discussed, which was Access Manager. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go into provisions. So like Malcolm said, Access Manager is essentially where you're able to manage and take action on the provisioning of users. So you'll notice here, here's a listing of the different provisions that we have in a pending approval status. So these are users where we've given them certain roles. Now we're going to have those provisions go through a certain approval process to ensure that everything meets the criteria, and we've got multiple people reviewing that before it actually takes effect. And if we open this up, you'll notice that this looks very similar to that what if analysis that we just saw. And that's because it is, right? This is looking at a very similar format, but in this case, from the Access Manager, we can actually take action here in terms of provisioning those roles. So what if was giving us that insight, whereas now we're able to kind of run that analysis, get that information, and then go ahead and actually take action and execute the provisioning of those roles. So you can see here, I've given Adrian in this case, I'm provisioning him the buyer role as well as the payables payment processor role. So it's going to show me immediately some of the violations that are going to come as a result of that. And I'm able to see that and even go ahead and start handling the provisions. So I can come in, remove a certain provision, delete it, add a different provisioned role. So it's going to show me all those violations, give me the ability to then manage and take action right from here. And on top of that, it's going to show me the approval details as well. So I mentioned this earlier. We saw that this particular user provisioning was in that pending approval status. But there is robust workflow available within GRC. So as you go through different provisionings, the different reports you run, you're always able to have those actions go through a level or multiple levels of approval to ensure that multiple people are reviewing that, and everything meets the criteria that you have defined. So the last thing that we're going to look at here in our live demonstration is Certification Manager. Now, Certification Manager, as Malcolm kind of gave us a little bit of explanation of earlier, is what allows you to do what we call those periodic access reviews, right? So yes, we have all of these incredible functional areas that help to mitigate risk and help us to be proactive in terms of monitoring and managing user provisions. However, we also need to always make sure that we're doing consistent reviews. Even if we don't have many violations for certain users, we want to put in place that standard of making sure that we're reviewing each of those user provisions on a frequency that makes sense to your organization, but to ensure that there isn't any risk and that we've always got that review to look back to. So here are some of the reviews that we have sitting out there right now that are kind of within the process here. So I'm going to open up this review here. And this is just a review again where we're going in looking at certain users' access and being able to look at all that provisioning, review it, get a little bit more information around it, and do that kind of annual or biannual check and make sure that this still looks good. And in this case, Robert Young still has the correct provision. So you'll notice here I get a listing quickly of all of his roles, and I can go ahead and start to approve, reject, or reassign those roles. So I can go one by one to ensure that I'm reviewing each individual element that's been assigned to Robert, make sure that looks good, and then have that workflow process help continue that so I can complete my review ultimately. So very handy, again, the system's kind of walking you through this process to make it, again, so that you have those checks and balances, but not a large manual effort to continue going through these kind of certifications. Now, another helpful element here is we're able to use our violation summary generator as well. So maybe I'm a manager, I'm in here, I'm reviewing some of some of my team's provisioning. I can come in here and actually get a quick summary and see if there are any obvious violations that are coming out of the current provisioning that some of my users have. So you'll see I can immediately have the solution go ahead, take a look at all of those different roles that this user has, and immediately push out to me whether or not there are any violations. And in this case, it looks like Robert Young has all these different roles. None of them going against those rule books are going to trigger any violations, meaning I can go ahead, approve Robert, and get that periodic access review completed. All right, so jumping back there, just to do a quick recap, we were able to look at 3 of the 4 core pillars of GRC. So we saw authorization insights, how we're able to manage those segregation of duties, give you all the tools you need to be proactive versus reactive. And then we saw the ease of use of Access Manager, really empowering you and your team to manage and take action on who is provisioned what. And then lastly, we took a look at Certification Manager, making it easy for you all to do those periodic access reviews, putting all the information in one place for you, and allowing you to consistently keep your finger on the pulse of who is provisioned with what. So I am now going to pass it back to Malcolm to do a little bit of a knowledge check, as well as have a little bit of fun with some giveaways.
Yeah, appreciate that, Isabel. Good job. As Jordan can attest, I like to have fun during these type of events. I think we're all family. And so I reached out to Christy and I said, hey, man, let's give away some free stuff. And so she was all on board with it. And so with that being said, before we jump into answering any questions, I wanted to have some fun and ask a few questions myself. This is not to test you, but to do a check on learning and just to see where you are and to see if you've been listening a little bit. So, let me show you some of the things. If Christy hasn't already, she should be placing an image into the chat with the items that we want to give away. So I know we have some awesome socks. I actually have some here. And I think this is one of the events, or not events. This is one of the items we'll be giving away when I'm asked 3 questions, right? And I have some other socks here. I don't think these are necessarily the ones in the chat, but there are some other black socks. As you can tell, I've been answering a lot of Infor questions correctly through my time dealing with Infor, and that's how I've been able to get my hands on all of these Infor things. So it's a beautiful thing. So the first question is, and Jordan, you may have heard these. So before I say the question, or ask the question, use the raise your hand feature. And so whoever has the number 1 next to their hand, we'll let them answer first, and then we'll go in the subsequent order. So the first question, can anyone tell me by show of hands, what does SOD stand for? Yeah, I thought Jordan had raised his hand, but he said he's going to back out. What does SOD stand for?
Oh,
I'll tell you what.
I mean, if nobody's going to answer, it's segregation of duties.
This is correct. This is correct, Jordan. We have to still send you some socks or whatever you want. So Jordan for 1. All right. So here's the second question. Can anyone tell me what GRC stands for? And Jordan, he'll pause for a second.
it's on the screen. That's
Yeah.
not fair.
I do think everybody deserves socks though, Christy. So you might have to go
I
ahead and send
agree.
it all out.
Everybody's going to get socks.
Yeah. But if nobody knows, Jordan, what does GRC stand for?
Why? Governance, risk, and compliance.
That is
Woo!
correct. And so another little thing here, when you implement GRC, you have an opportunity to learn a lot about the navigation, some logic behind the scenes. And one of the tools that actually moves data from Landmark or Infor Cloud Suite over to GRC is Ion. And Ion moves XML packets called BODs. And so can anyone tell me And it's okay if you don't know, because when you implement GRC, you will get very familiar with ION, right? And async. And so, can anyone tell me what ION stands for? ION. This is even a challenge for you, Jordan. I know you've been dealing with ION, so hopefully you have that answer as well.
Is it intelligent open network?
I love it, man. I love when people have the answers, man. That's correct, man. So I did want to do that. Jordan, we do owe you some socks, but I think Christy, everybody deserves some socks or a booklet or a cup or a mug or whatever they prefer. And so I did want to do that, have a little fun. But now I'd like to open the floor up for any questions. And I don't see anything in the Q&A. So if you want to come off mute and ask questions, that's fine as well.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple questions. As we, recently went live with the finance and supply management module as part of phase 2 implementation, and had the pleasure of working with a lot of the presenters on the call. But we're now interested in GRC, which is why I'm here, and Amy joined as well. So Malcolm, you mentioned earlier going from 9,331 violations to 121 true violations, which is remarkable, and much easier to review than 9,000. Could you walk us through the process your team took for really confirming which were true violations versus false positives? Just to basically, how did you validate,
Right.
that the violations that were coming back were accurate when it's
Yep,
such a
no
big
worries.
difference?
No worries. So taking a step back to the 9,331, obviously we didn't have a solution. We didn't have rule books. We didn't have a tool to actually compare business class LPL to. So there was no true comparison, and that's how you get that number. So post implementation, we actually had GRC, Authorization Insight. We were able to leverage those rule books that Isabel showed you, and that's truly how you're going to validate the output, right? So we went to 121. How do we know that was accurate? Well, because our users, our actors, or our objects were provisioned said roles, and these roles had access to those business classes which were driven by the rule books. So the rule books don't lie. You set the rule books, you set the logic, you set what you want to validate. Obviously, you'll want to deal with the out of the box rule books, but if there are custom things or business processes that you have within your environment, you definitely want to create a custom rule book that will literally leverage and output a violation if there is a violation based on that rule book. And so it wasn't magic. We didn't have a special spreadsheet that helped us do this. We just understood our provisioning, we understood our security architecture, and we understood the rule books. And so you just have to know how to make that relationship. And during implementation and doing your sit testing, that's when you will get all of that squared away. So when you hit, evaluate, you'll truly get the exact number. Now, looking at your output reports, then you can also validate from your reports, like, yes, I do see that this violation is in the rule book. So this does make sense. Now, if you see something outside of that, or if it's manual, then you will obviously know that that's something wrong. And then you can mitigate and look at those things manually if you see a false positive, but the rule books drive all of that logic.
Makes sense. Great
Yeah,
question, Jordan. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I think you kind of answered the question I was going to direct to Isabel about the pre-built, kind of out of the box rule book. Just as a starting point, obviously, I don't think every customer is just going to be able to enable that and move on. I realize customization is needed. So, but just wanted to know if there was some scaffolding to work from to build out the rules for the organization, and it sounds like that is delivered as part of the implementation.
Yes, absolutely. So those best practice rules, again, things that we've used our experience working with those different audit firms that we bring to the table as a starting point. But just like Malcolm alluded to with his experience, it's all about setting that up and making it your own during implementation based on what you need, your different processes, things like that. So yes, absolutely.
Great question. Hey, guys, I have a question that may resonate. I mean, a lot of our organizations are going through growth and change and maybe are about to embark on some, really increase in hiring that's going to advance some things. And they're going to have a lot of different people coming in and out of the system than maybe used to. So in that kind of scenario where they might have turnover or hiring a bunch of people, real quick, does GRC help in any of those kind of areas just to protect all that's going on from people accessing things that maybe they shouldn't?
In my standpoint, yeah, exactly. Like, you have some smaller organizations where you have certain individuals doing more than they should, right? Which is inherent segregation of duty violation. When you're able to break that out, what GRC does, in my opinion, is it definitely will save your job because it saves you from getting fired or or to save you from getting violations for being out of compliance, for having someone who can create a requisition, receive the PO, and then pay the invoice to themselves. And I've actually seen that here in the Dallas area for a hospital system I won't mention, where they had $1 million fraud case. So GRC definitely helps with fraud prevention. It can help save your job, and it can help save your whole organization from just losing money due to being non-compliant.
Or penalties, right?
Or penalties as well,
from an
right?
audit. Yeah, great call. Does anybody else have any
and
other
saves
questions?
time in the audit reports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely, because you can just generate these reports. One of the things I
Right.
think Isabel, you or Nick had shared with me was, what if you get asked, give me a list of all the employees who have access to someone's social security number, and and how manual and laborious and all those dark, scary words that we showed earlier might do that. What we're hoping, team, is that you've been able to see a little bit that life after GRC might be a little more calm and peaceful, and you've got an approach to handling some of these rather than chaos and frenetic, crazy panic. So we put together this word cloud, more of a calming color scheme, because it really does help take and advance you there. And I'm hoping you guys can see that. I was very impressed that an organization as large as and as complicated as Christus could do some of these modules in such an effective time frame. Because everyone's leaders, all of the people on the call, all of your leaders are looking for that time to value, right? And give me my results. So anyway, I thought this was kind of fun if we would do that. So I appreciate it. If there are no more questions, let's talk about some next steps. Does anybody have questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
As far as our organization goes, I apologize. I had a conflict. I had to join a little later, and Ed had sent this over to us.
Okay.
Is this something that Jennifer and Ed were looking into, or is this okay?
Yeah.
And I assume it's not something that we currently own.
That's right. You don't currently own it. I think Ed has it on your, kind of been talking to Anna and Christy about road mapping stuff, and this was one of them. I was thinking about it for you guys because y'all are going to be having some changes and growth, and it'll help ease some of that process, Sam. But yeah, this is something that he had kind of noodled and just had it on his kind of wish list radar.
Okay. And I may have missed this portion of it, but as far as the roles go, I know we have a lot of custom roles, not just the ST roles. Is this available to look at those custom roles and evaluate those as well?
100%.
Okay.
Yes. Sam, I know Lakeland, like all of my customers, have their unique characteristics. That's what we look at.
So yes, I mean we do a series of reports for this evaluation now, so I can definitely see the need for it, and we kind of assist not only talent but our compliance security team with this data. So this would definitely help in that aspect.
Yeah, it really streams the line and gives the security team something they can wrap their hands around and sink their teeth into and really present and go to, be it short order, short notification. But either way, the time savings and just the accuracy and knowing you're going to one place and not recreating it from compiling from hither and yon would really help. So thank you for sharing that. But Sam, you bring up a good question. I'd be curious as you guys go back to your organizations, how much do people really understand what's happening in their organization now? How much do they really understand what it takes to get some of this? So the reason for that Malcolm and Christus were able to document some of those results, they had gone through a process to figure out what it takes a team to get to some of this information. So we're hoping that life before GRC and life after GRC will really start to resonate and hit the bottom line from hours saved, etc. And then we can always have further conversation. Jeff Brewster, my counterpart here over at ROI, and I are available to dig in, answer questions, see how it might fit for you, where you're going to get the biggest bang for those various modules that you might realize, and let us know how we can help. I mean, ultimately, we are here to serve you and help make you successful. ROI is a great partner in this. Malcolm has obviously done it at a very complicated organization, so we're excited to partner in him with this, but I think it'll be fun. So let us know how we can help.